Welcome to the host, Kathleen Flanagan. The journey of an awakening spirit is about teaching you a variety of tools that you can use to step into your true self. It is about self-discovery, realizing you are not alone on your journey. We will open the phone lines, give readings, and talk about what our listeners want to know. So please welcome the host of the journey of an awakening spirit, Kathleen Flanagan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey of an Awakening Spirit. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host, and we are streaming on the Bold Brave TV network. And today we have Dr. Lynn Carey, who we will be speaking with. She is a chiropractor, and when I met her, we had some interesting conversations and some realizations about things that I didn't even know about my health. So this should be a very interesting topic that we're going to have today with her. But first, we're going to start with sound, which will be love, happiness, and balance. Well, Dr. Lynn Carey gathered a lot of insight learning to heal herself after suffering with sickness and pain for many years. In her 18 years practicing as a chiropractor, she saw the chronic stress was the main issue for most people not healing. Chronic stress came from not enough time, not enough money, and not having passion or purpose in life. She knows that creating a desired lifestyle is the key to ultimate well-being. Welcome, Dr. Lynn.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kathleen. It's an honor to be here. I know you and I have very similar philosophies. I was just watching your mastery of alignment, and I thought, oh, we are so on the same page. You were right on with everything you said. I highly recommend that for everyone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Mine's, the journey of a tough life, let's just say, and the process of waking up in that. And I know that when you and I had the conversation about scoliosis, which I think is really critical to talk about because that was such an eye-opening experience for me. But first, I want people to know who you are and where you started from and how you are here today. So what was your journey becoming an awakening spirit?
I think I came into this lifetime knowing that there had to be more. I, like you, felt severe depression as a child, as a teenager. I just didn't find joy that other people seem to have joy, like even kids playing and things like that. It just, I could go along to get along, but I really didn't see much happiness in my family. Everybody was just working hard and there was no time to rest and there was still never enough. That was that whole mindset. And I'm also a recovering Catholic. And I never really brought into the dogma. I think I was just always felt the higher presence of a source, of God, or however you want to call it. But I just was very depressed too. And I truly believe that was the foundation of why I ended up having scoliosis, because one of the emotional causes is if either your parents are pulling you in two different directions or they're going in two different directions, or you're going in another direction than your parents. Like there's two different messages and it's pulling you in two directions. And basically from what society to my mom to school was telling me one thing, and I was feeling something else completely. Like I didn't want to be here either. I'm like, if this is what life is, I want out. I felt that deeply. And, then being Catholic, you feel guilty even feeling that way, right? But that's because that's instilled too. You feel guilty for everything you do. But I do believe that's what caused my scoliosis. And I just did everything the medical world said because that's the only path I knew. And I ended up having spinal surgery where they put Harrington rods in my spine. And the surgery itself was a success according to them, but it left me sick and in pain for years that they could not answer why I kept getting sick. It was like another antibiotic, another painkiller, another thing, and nothing helped. And then fast forward about 5 years, I was 19 in college because they told me I had to go to college to be successful, even though I hated school. But I worked really hard. I was an A student. I was doing everything I was told. But I just didn't, I was trying to find myself, and someone told me to look into the profession of chiropractic. And the philosophy said the power that made the body heals the body. And I thought that was the first time I heard truth. It just resonated. Like, when you hear something that you never heard before, it's like this resonance. And I just went. I didn't even get adjusted. I just went to chiropractic school on that philosophy. And that's where I started getting adjusted, along with changing my mindset and being around all these, like-minded people who had a different view of health. And it completely changed my life, and it started my journey forward.
I have to say, when you talked about, okay, we have similar lives, that's very clear. You're saying things like, okay, I haven't talked about that in years, and that's exactly where I was at. But the scoliosis, when we talked the first time, and you said we were being pulled in two different directions, I mean, I had never heard that before. And I was like, oh my God, that is so where I was as a teenager too, suicidal, didn't want to be here. I was bound and determined to die. And I was actually working on implementing that at 16 years old, because if my parents' life was going to be my life, I would rather be dead, because that was not a life, in my opinion. And so the scoliosis was there, and I had a really nasty uncle who, every time he walked in the house, because my shoulders were hunched over, would come in and just whack me on the back really hard to get me to stand up straight. And my parents allowed this, okay? So it's like, okay, first of all, you don't touch anyone like that, especially a girl when you're a man. And then how dare you even do that? I mean, because it was not a light tap. It was a whack on the back where it was instant, you're just walking around like that. But when you said that, and I remember, I knew that somewhere deep inside, I could heal that about myself. I don't know why I did, but I moved to Florida. And I remember somebody telling me one day, asking me, saying, have you been in the military? And I said, no, why? He said, because you stand so tall and erect. Your posture is like a military person. I'm like, okay. And what a thing, because for someone who was really consciously working on scoliosis, but then I didn't realize at that time it was about me, connecting with spirit, connecting with my own inner self. I was too young at that point to understand what I was doing, but I just knew somewhere I could do that. And I was diagnosed with scoliosis by chiropractors. I actually have the x-rays and everything to show that it was there. So, I mean, I really did a lot of work to I need to get through this, but I didn't do the regular adjustments because, that back cracking just made me crazy. I felt good, but it made me crazy because it's like, ooh, it just, ooh.
You might have had a chiropractor who didn't resonate with their energy, especially if you're sensitive to energy, because this profession, I mean, I guess any profession is, but there is such a wide variety of chiropractors, and a lot of them I don't agree with. I think a lot of them are clueless. Maybe they never had their own healing experiment, and a lot of them just want to join the ranks of the medical world instead of honoring that we're something unique and different, and in my opinion, better because of what's going on with this medical world. It's not really about healing anymore. It's about big pharma, and all the drugs and all the intervention. And I learned that in school, but having my own experience of healing, you just can walk into so many different chiropractors have completely different experiences. I'd be like, God, that person calls himself a chiropractor too. I kind of wish they didn't. I don't like saying that I'm a chiropractor and they're a chiropractor too, because we're so different. So I say that, maybe the energy was off, even the way he adjusted you. I've had weird adjustments. So maybe that was part of it.
It could be, because I know that I had one where she was a naturopath as well. And when I was going in, when I had coptis from too many antibiotics, when I came close to death in my late 30s, she was a chiropractor as well, and she didn't do a lot, but she did enough to like really help with my neck, because I had a birth trauma, because they used the forceps and did this to my neck, and I had three vertebrae literally on their side. So I spent years and years and years in pain. So I managed to finally, between massage and some chiropractic work with somebody who was good, I managed to get at least two of the three. The third one still pops out every now and then. It's not, but nothing like what it used to be. And I used to just sit here and try to push it back in when it would pop out. But I realized that that was a birth injury, and I didn't know that at the time, because my grandmother had said something to me when I was older and said, your head was like this when I was born. I mean, it was just crooked. And what do you do? So I don't know what the doctors did at that point, but she noticed it, and that explained a lot. So yes, welcome to the world. This is not a safe place to be. The messages from the onset of my life was, it's not safe. You're not loved. You're not wanted. All we want to do is hurt you. And so I walked around pretty much for the first 20 years of my life like that, until I started changing and looking at, there's got to be something different and better. And even though I didn't have health issues, I had a lot of head garbage. But yet I also noticed that when I got sick, my head garbage got worse. And not that I got sick a lot, but when I did, it was just no. I couldn't stand being sick. I mean, I thought it was just such a waste of time. And today it's like, if you're going to get sick, it's just like, you got 24 hours to do your thing. Because there was a
It's
value to it.
unfortunately, that's the only time we stop. We're
Yeah.
trained in society, it's not good to rest or be still or do nothing. So a lot of us get sick because that's the only way out. And I specifically remember being in the hospital having my surgery, thinking, well, all drugged up in the hospital, horrible, right? Couldn't even walk, thinking this is better than my life. At least I have a break. Like, how crazy is that?
It is crazy. That is crazy, because I think, I learned along the way to I do stop and I rest. I spend a lot of time by myself because I like myself. I had to learn to like myself. And when I moved in by myself, when I was about 21 years old, because I used to live with like 6 women, and it was great at that time. But there was a point of, I just don't want to be around all of that anymore. There was something calling me to be like, you got to learn who you are. Because I was getting lost living with 6 women, as I was lost in my family. Everything was always people, people, people. And who am I? Where am I? What am I thinking? How do I feel? I don't know, because I was like this chameleon back then. And so when I got by myself is when I started really doing a lot of looking at myself, a lot of spiritual connection. Mother Mary would come into my room at night, because I was dealing with my mental health issues, because my father was neurotic, probably maybe more psychotic than neurotic. But I was dealing with all that stuff, because I thought I was crazy for the longest time, because I'm hearing things and people don't hear what I'm hearing. And I thought everybody at one time could do that, and they didn't. And so it was just this long journey of just self-discovery. And part of it just meant I had to just like be okay with myself. And that wasn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do. And alternatives weren't out there yet for me. So if I did anything happen, it was still, you go to the doctor, and, and I didn't like doctors. I didn't trust them at all. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're just going to dive in a little bit more with Dr. Lynn and see what else she has under her sleeve of what she's learned through chiropractic.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host on the Bold Brave TV network, and we are talking with Dr. Lynn Carey today. So, Dr. Lynn, tell us a little bit more about the journey, because even though this resonated with you being a chiropractor, there had to be a lot of changes because your philosophy has changed over the years from what you've experienced. I mean, did you just meet a lot of people that had very similar things? Was it something you just observed? How long did it take for you to really start seeing a bigger picture? Because, as we're younger, as we mature, we start seeing more than we do when we're younger. So how long did it take you to start discovering the things that you did about self-healing and self-mastery over your health and your well-being?
So I think it was a process of starting chiropractic school where I was actually learning that with the chiropractic philosophy, we learned that there's an inner wisdom that runs the body. We called it innate intelligence. And we were always trying to say, well, what is the body trying to do? We don't look at symptoms as necessarily bad. There's a purpose for them. Your body does everything with a purpose to heal itself. And so that was the intent. And the intent was just to, if there was any misalignment in the spine, which is basically each vertebrae should be moving properly. When it stops moving, that just interferes with how the brain communicates with the body, because your nervous system is housed through the spine and exits through the spine to communicate to the rest of the body. So it wasn't about fixing anything. It was just clearing out interference so the body could heal itself. And I had a lot of trauma to my spine. I had missing spinal parts, and it took time, years. I was probably sick for the last 5 years, and nothing that the medical world could do helped me. And so I had nothing but time. And they said it takes time to heal. So I would say it probably took me the first 2 years in chiropractic school to truly get out of pain regularly. It would be on and off, really severe bouts, because the thing is too, is when your body's healing, a lot of times pain becomes worse. I always say you have to feel it to heal it. And that could be applied to emotional stuff too, right?
Yep.
So that was the journey. It was more physical for me. I would say halfway through, I started noticing the emotional correlation, because my first chiropractor was really, he was a higher up student he taught me so much how to be a chiropractor. He was fantastic, because I actually started with one of the chiropractors who was a professor at the school, and she wasn't cutting it. I was getting adjusted by her for 6 months, and I think she was afraid to touch my spine. And this higher up student was kind of on the journey with me, because we had like after school clubs where we would learn from other chiropractors and kind of practice. And I wasn't, I couldn't have anybody practice on my spine, but I would go and learn. And he just said, "Do you want me to check you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he always went with what he felt. And he started adjusting me with what he felt with his hands. And I started feeling a difference. So he was graduating. And the last time he adjusted me before he left, my back went out really bad. And
Wow.
I realized I'm like, that's crazy. Every time he adjusts me, I usually, not that it was a quick fix, but it was never like this dramatic where I felt like worse, really bad, like my back was out. And I realized I was terrified of losing my chiropractor. I was emotionally attached with him. He was my foundation. So I saw that connection, because then I started, coming out of that. I also noticed I was studying really hard. I was a crazy perfectionist, type A, worked really hard to the point of exhaustion. That was my paradigm. And it really came to the forefront in the last couple of years at chiropractic school. I was studying really hard for this test, and had a headache, like that all year. Like everything I did, the adjustments, massage, diet, like everything. But until I was studying for this test, and when it was over is when the headache finally cleared up. And I'm like, I was so worried about that test, because it would pay like half tuition. It was like something I could do for my mom. It was like all this pressure I put on myself. So I was really starting to connect the dots. But then it wasn't until I went back to my hometown after chiropractic school, because I thought I was going to go back to my hometown and share this message of how I'm doing so much better, how we heal ourselves, this whole philosophy of chiropractic. I thought I was going to go back and change the world. And I swear I opened up which that's a whole other story, is me even trying to figure out how to open up a practice, because nobody taught me about money or business in school. You got nothing practical in school. So I'm figuring this out blindly, and just kind of horrified by how I see how real life works. But it was like I opened up my doors to my practice, and it was like spirit took over. And I swear I went into fast forward about how healing happens, money, finance, how the world works, how it was affecting people and their health. So I felt like it was really, really stirred up once I got into practice, for me.
Well, I know that the back is a support. I mean, there's different, depending on the metaphysical side, you have, you're carrying the weight on your shoulders, money issues at the lower spine, center is you're not feeling supported. So, I mean, it would make sense that your back would go out. To me, you saying that this person was a very strong support in your life. And when you thought you were going to lose him, your support left you. And what did you have to do? You had to start finding that inside of yourself. Like here, I'm out of school, I'm doing good. And then it's like, oh my God, what do I have to do next? And thank God, because you listen to your spirit, because we're never alone. Spirit is always guiding us. So, I mean, we come out and we're, I'm going to go change the world, and we have no clue what to do, but spirit is there and they're standing behind you. They're going to help you succeed. So, I mean, what a cool thing to experience, because we don't learn anything about business when we know how to do a little bit with money, but running a business, cash flow, hiring people, paying rent, all that kind of stuff, aside from your house rent, and food. I mean, and there's that huge responsibility that comes on. And I think when I was younger, I was like, I wasn't about to take that on, because that just terrified me. I could pay my bills. That wasn't the issue, but it was the whole point of taking on responsibility for someone else was very challenging. But yet I was willing to help people and work on people, but it was for free, because I didn't think there was a worthiness issue in there. So, I just love that, how much you trusted as you went into a world that just resonated with you. And yet here I am coming up from another side, and I still made it. Doesn't matter. We're all going to make it and survive if we choose to, and it all comes to the mindset, because what you're saying is you had to look at your mindset. You had to look at your paradigms. So what else did that look like as you were growing your business and bringing in possibly new clients and employees and all of that? So, I mean, what else went on? Because there was more as you took on more energy and responsibility. There were some more changes going on in your life.
Yeah. So I really just started teaching myself. I just started reading books, and I came across a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that changed forever how I looked at finances, just kind of like how chiropractic forever changed how I viewed health. He just talked about building assets versus trading time for money. And I tell you, I really had a difficult time being paid for my chiropractic services, because it was such a purpose and a passion for mine. of mine and how it changed my life. I never even thought that I would feel that way. You don't know how you're going to react to something until you're in the situation. It was things that were coming up for me that I never even contemplated. And I thought, oh, now I have to get people in the door. Are they thinking that I'm telling them to get adjusted because now I have to get paid? It just like, I was like, this is weird. Like, it was a weird concept for me. And then I saw chiropractor colleagues of mine that were very principled chiropractors in chiropractic school. But when they got into practice, to me, they were compromising their principles. They started doing things to get people in the door that I didn't agree with, taking insurance that wanted to dictate how they practiced, actually, I felt fear into people that they had to be there to get adjusted because look what this x-ray says, instead of giving them hope and healing. And I thought, I'm not I will never compromise myself. I'll do something else because that's just not what it's all about. I've always been about the principle side. I did some mission work. I went to Brazil and India during this time just because I got invited on a couple of trips with other chiropractors that they wanted to take chiropractic abroad. People that in their practice saying, hey, my hometown is in this little town in Brazil. Can you bring chiropractic there? We just went. But what a gift, because I got to go and just adjust people all day long. They couldn't even speak the language. I mean, we had translators, but really people were just lining up to be on my table. And it was just energy. I was able to really just feel their energy, adjust them, and set them and let them go. And we went into such a high state of vibration. Like, this was the first time I felt out of body, high, and there was no drugs involved. It wasn't like I was drinking. It was like natural high. But I didn't understand what was happening because when I came home, it was like I crashed again. I felt the depression because it went from so high to then like normal life wasn't. But I knew I tapped into something. And eventually it caught up with me where I had, different processes. But the third trip, I came back and I ended up going into a bliss state for like 18 months at home. And I realized, I'm like, okay, this is what everybody's looking for. I'm adjusting people to raise the vibration, right? I want them to be able to tap into this inner state, but they need to learn to do it on their own. That's when all the stuff you were teaching with the mastery of alignment. Why am I aligning the spine? Like, it was such a metaphor for life. And I realized that's what everybody's looking for. They think they want the next relationship. They want more money. They want the bigger house, or they want the next trip, but they're really just looking for the bliss state within. We've been so dumbed down and numbed out in this matrix of a society that we don't know who we are anymore. But we know, and innately it's there, but that's why nobody talks about it. I think we're talking about it now. I think there's a huge shift happening. But I realized I was watching people coming into my office, and I realized, they're not connecting the emotional stress that they're under in their lives with why they need the adjustment. Why is that causing them stress? Why is that blocking the energy in their body that they want me to fix? Where I became more passionate about, well, how can you do the adjustment yourself? I could adjust you all day long, but if you're not doing the inner work, the mastery of alignment, right? How can we get ourselves into this bliss state and that be our normal state, and then create your life from that place? Become financially free, have healthy habits, have a great mindset, look for the happiness, the gratitude. So it was all these things were coming together for me in I would say the first 5 years in practice.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So did you share that with your clients about how to start aligning? Did you take that one step further to start educating them? Because I know for me, alignment was huge. And because I knew what that connection was. And when I didn't have it, I was depressed. So I knew I had to get back into that. And meditation was probably the biggest thing that helped me to really make that connection with spirit and to stay in that connection with spirit, because it opened that channel, because I discovered that I wasn't this god-awful, horrible person that didn't deserve to be here, that I did matter and I did have a purpose. And it was through meditation that helped me with a lot of that. And because of that, I was able to just move forward and start experimenting a little bit more, where I felt a little bit more secure in just what I was doing. Maybe not the best. I didn't feel like I was on solid ground, but I just knew spirit wouldn't harm me. They would protect me. I have always known that about this. So did you do things like that to help people to kind of shift their perspective a little bit, because shifting your perspective just a little bit is miles and miles and miles apart in moving in that direction of where they want to go down the road.
Absolutely. And I definitely know my verbiage has evolved. When I went into that bliss state, I had no words to what I was experiencing. And I was trying to figure out what, put words to it. How do you describe this? And I make a rational understanding when there is no rational, it was like this. And I just started reading, and, like saints who had these altered experiences, Hafiz, Rumi, the Sufi poets, like what they, in their poetry, described the experience I had. That's what I liked. But so I was trying to make the connection with telling people, in the beginning, it was more mechanical, like the birth trauma. I would say you can get misaligned from the birth trauma. You mentioned that, right? That's why I had my son at home without the medical interference, because I saw one of the main things that causes interference is all the medical intervention that's happened, especially in the birth process. They treat it like a disease instead of a natural process. It's huge. I adjusted my son since he was born.
Wow.
So that was one thing, more mechanical like that. But then I started incorporating the mindset. I always had a quote on like a whiteboard so people could change their perspective, have a positive thought for the day. I have different like flyers that I would give out each week on positive thought, positive things, a positive story, how we heal. And then I would recommend to people, hey, Louise Hay, how you can heal your body. And she has that chart, the emotional cause behind the symptom. I think that's huge. I think people need to understand the emotional connection behind. And I say, play your detective. Journal. Why do you think you're in this state? Why do you think this symptom or pain is showing up? But what I noticed is, and this is where my frustration was, I just felt that most people, oh, that's great. But then they would come in the next week or the next month or whatever, and they didn't do anything that I said. And, it was like, oh, just fix me. Let me just get on with my life. I have bills to pay. I have kids to run after. And I just never got into it. And then, I'd have to hear the same stories over and over again. I didn't get into it for the small talk. I didn't get into it to be the town doctor. I didn't, my vision for myself was expanding. Chiropractic kind of walked the line. It had a mainstream facade, but it's also very spiritual if you're really doing the right thing. And for me, I was taken off on a spiritual place that, I think I was a little ahead of, where we are now. I do believe there's a massive shift, like I said, coming now. Things are so different than in 1998 when I opened up my practice.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, you're definitely a foreleader out there in the world of spirituality and chiropractic, because it was bone crunching. That's pretty much how most chiropractors looked at it. We're bone crunchers. And like, well, I don't like my bones being crushed, especially in my neck, because it just freaked me out because I was so sensitive to my neck. I mean, I couldn't even do headstands, and I didn't even know why I couldn't do headstands when I was in high school. I mean, there were things I could not do at all, period. My ballroom dancing definitely straightened my neck out a lot too, because, the way you hold it, I'm like, what are these things growing right here? Oh, muscle. I mean, but you don't know that. I mean, you just see things and it's like, do I have like something going on? Do I have cancer growing? I mean, you go down this weird negative place, and then it's like, no, Kath, no, this is muscle, because the way you're holding, you're holding your posture in such a way, and my neck is the strongest my neck has ever been.
I just had a little aha moment. Like, you probably didn't like someone cracking your neck too, because you remember the birth trauma, right? When the doctor did whatever he did to pull you out, or however it happened, because there's so much trauma when you're born in a hospital in the medical way that nobody talks about. So you already probably had a sense of memory. So that wasn't a good experience, but maybe you were able to heal it through the ballroom dancing. Happiness is key. You found your flow in dancing. So you could release that, right? Not only building up the muscles, but you were changing the whole dynamic of your body because you were in flow. Happiness is key to healing.
I know. And so because of that, the books Dancing Soul came out. I mean, these are the two published books, but this was all about dancing, because everything changed when I danced. everything changed. I made a connection with my dance partner that when we got into that dance position, because this was the second studio I had gone to, and we connected, and I jumped back from him and was like, what the hell are you doing? I'm just getting into dance position. Well, that is not what happened to this girl, because every chakra went all the way up to the surf, all the way up. Every chakra was lit up. And I was freaked out because I had never touched a human like that, where something hit me to that degree. And then I was on this immense whirlwind for years because of it. And it was like, and all through the book, it was about, and all the trauma in my own brain was connecting with another person in the dance of life. And if you can dance with somebody in ballroom clothes, you can dance, you can work with them. Because the guy I was with at the time, I mean, we did ballroom dancing. I couldn't dance with him. I was like, go away, just go away. Because he was so controlling, and I couldn't handle the control the way he danced. And it was nothing wrong with him. It was just, I couldn't dance that way because I was being constricted. And with my other partner, what was the biggest thing I had told him over the years? I don't trust you. Well, why not? Well, I think you're going to dance me into a wall because I can't see behind me. So here's a trust issue coming out, because I had no trust with anybody. So here's this trust issue coming out because I think he's going to dance me into a wall because I can't see behind me. I see a peripheral vision, which of course is always closer than where it is. And the one time that we almost went into a wall, and it was by a sheer fluke, or maybe spirit did it intentionally, it's hard to say. He flipped around so fast and hit the wall where I didn't get hit.
Oh, wow.
This 24-year-old kid at the time was really helping me to overcome so much garbage that I was carrying. And I had no idea I was carrying as much as I was until I got into this ballroom dance with this 24-year-old kid. I mean, he was one of the most amazing teachers for me, but I was for him too, because what did I do? I ignited his spiritual growth.
That's right.
And so that's the dance of life. So yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right about, because when anybody would ever adjust my neck and I hear that cracking, I would just cringe and just about come off the table. And they would always do it when they would wait until they knew I wasn't conscious about it. It was like they knew I was tense, I was tense, I was tense. And then somewhere I was like, oh, they're not going to do it. And I relax and they hit me. Kind of like the birth trauma, I think. And that's what it was like. And so when the last doctor I had, when she had Thumper, I called it Thumper. She called it Thumper too, where she had that little thing where you just hit it and it just punches, and it's soft. I don't know what it's called, but we called it Thumper. And when she adjusted my neck that way, that was like, I could handle that because it wasn't crunching and all of that stuff that goes on. And it wasn't all the sounds. It was just, to me, it was a very gentle way of helping my neck remember where it belongs.
Yeah, that's right. And release
because
the trauma.
Isn't that what we're trying to do? Try to get our body to remember how it's supposed to be, come back into homeostasis.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think there is a key component to getting adjustments, because we have to get reconnected with our body. I know I was not connected with my body. I probably left it a long time ago. I was like a walking corpse because I had so much trauma and I just didn't want to be here anyway, and all the pain and everything. So the emotion, I don't think we can separate the emotions and the mental stress and the physical, because it's all energy. And so if you're not able to handle emotional and mental stress, it gets locked up in the body. So we have to kind of get that energy flowing again. And I think adjustments are a key part of that, especially if you're just starting out. But know that it's not the chiropractor doing it for you. It's just he or she can be just a mentor until you start to get in tune with your own energy again, and I think that should be just one part. But I think you still have to really examine what's going on in your inner world.
Right. And I want to elaborate on that more, because some things came up in my mind as you were saying that, that I think are very profound and need to be brought to the forefront about our connection with our bodies. But we're going to go ahead and take a short break. We'll see you back in a few minutes, everyone.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host, and we are streaming on the Build Brave TV network. And we have Dr. Lynn Carey, who is a chiropractor, and we are going a little bit deeper and further into the connection of the body and the mind. And the one thing that you said is that when you were disassociated or disconnected from your body from all the pain, I understand that because I actually left my body and did not come back into it until I was about 52. So I took a long time of not being connected with my body. And I actually had an acupuncturist decided one day she was going to put me back in my body without my consent or knowledge. And I remember coming home and I could feel the blood in my veins. That's how grounded she put me in my body, where I felt the blood. And I was not a happy camper. And it took me a year to get out of my body from that. Because, and I never went back to her again. There was a lot of problems she had a lot of problems. And, and acupuncture scared me after a while, because if you're the physician doing the work, you're piercing your garbage into somebody's body. And there's no way to control that, because it's actually it's being conducted through a needle into your body. And I ended up taking a lot of that garbage on, and I was not a happy camper. So acupuncturists scare me. Now, I know there's a lot of good acupuncturists out there. I've had some really good treatments, but, not so much anymore. I just, certain things just really make me nervous because I've had bad experiences. And it's not that I thought I had a bad doctor. It was she just had too much drama in her life, too much weird stuff, and it went in. So when you talked about being out of your body, the one thing that I noticed when I was out of my body was that I was still tuned into my body. I may not have felt a lot of things. I may not remember most of my life because of it, because people can say, well, you said this. Well, that's what I would have said, but I don't remember any of it. Literally, I do not remember the 90% of my life. And I'm okay with that. When I came back in, I remember. But the thing is I was still connected to my body. That even if I didn't know what was wrong with me, I knew something was wrong. And I could describe things. Because I just knew, like, when I was getting a divorce, my thyroid went out. And so, of course, when I discovered that, what's the first thing I do? Because they want to cut it out. And it's like, oh, you are not cutting out my thyroid. There is no way you are doing that. I went out and researched the value of that gland. It was like, oh yeah, so I'm going to be like a 300-pound blimp walking around and I'm going to be on meds the rest of my life. Oh, I don't think so. It was just no. And doctors don't necessarily like you taking control of your health like that, but I didn't care. It's my body. It's my body. It's always been my body. So he put me on these meds, and I kept going back and saying, you need to drop the medication. Now, I don't know what I started out at all, because I have no clue of what that was. But I said, you need to drop the meds. You need to drop the meds. And every time he took a blood test and we dropped the meds, he's like, how do you know this? I said, because I listened to my body. And I knew he knew what I meant by that. You know, that wasn't like something he hadn't heard before. He was just surprised that somebody knew their body. I said, I can't fix what's wrong with me right now, but I know when something needs to change. And so when after the year he did, I said, I'm getting off the meds. And he says, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. He says, no, your thyroid's still at 7. I said, well, that's where my thyroid lives, because I'm back to normal. Well, I'm not giving you a clean bill of health. And I said, I don't give a shit what you do. I'm healthy, I'm fine, and I'm done. And then all those drugs were coming out, whatever that was. I thought months and months and months. I just sat there because it all comes out of my stomach, right? So I'm scratching my stomach like on the outside, because I was so afraid I was going to be permanently damaged from all these fissures coming out of this medication. And it was like, if I don't ever have to go on drugs again, I'm not going to. It's like, I don't know what was in those drugs to cause that. And it's like, if this is what it feels like coming out, what was it doing on the inside of my body? Because I was detoxing. Because where was my thinking? I'm healthy, I'm healing, I got rid of the ex, life is good again. I didn't need all of that garbage of him anymore. It was like I was coming to peace. And because of that, my body was accelerating its own health as well. I mean, did you find that when you came back into your body and you were starting to heal, you feel all of that as well?
I got off everything. I got off everything I was on, and I started piecing, and I realized I had one final trip to the doctor for something, and they screwed it up, caused me trauma, and I'm like, I'm never coming back to these people again. I don't want what you have to offer. Like, I already knew in chiropractic school how they analyze the body, and it was ass backwards. I'm like, if people understood that they don't know, and if they saw that they don't even understand healing, they just know drugs and surgery. They either can cut it out or drug it. And I realized, that was the most empowering thing for me. I'm like, I'm not going back to you because I don't want what you have to offer. Not many people are in a position to tell their doctor, I'm done, I'm done with you. Like, a lot of people are so afraid. That's why I like to empower people. Like, probably the worst thing you can do is go to the doctor and get a diagnosis, because now you're creating it. Like, now you have fear that you have it, and you're thinking about it, and you're living around it and creating this. The worst thing you can do. Now, granted, am I going to tell people they can't go to their doctors? No. I realize everybody has to get to this place within themselves. It's a personal journey. But I say to you, question your doctor, question everything he says to you, and then go to every alternative healer, read things, educate yourself, become your own best doctor, and get in tune with what's going on with your body. Take the pieces that resonate with you, because it's just energy. Labels don't matter. I don't care what disease they call it. They have a million labels, a million drugs. It's energy flow. How are you stopping your energy flow? It's because you're stressed about something, or something's out of balance in your life. Most of the time it's because people aren't happy. They don't have purpose. They don't have time freedom. They're just living in the rat race of this matrix that's set up for us. So it's about deconstructing all that and really creating the life that you want. And that's how you get in tune with it, but it's a process. This was a journey of years for me, and making educated choices for myself. But then I was blessed to be able to do that for my son. He's 17 years old. He's never even been to a medical doctor. He's never had to go. And he's very in tune with his body. He makes choices for himself, which is amazing. But that's because I was educated for that. I know not every mom can do that. I'm not to instill guilt. And I had a lot of compassion for moms trying to make these decisions when they were questioning. That's a whole thing. But it's just about, we have to become our own best doctors, get in tune with the energy flow of your body, get in tune with the energy flow of your life. It's all one. We create our own reality. So, and there's nothing to fear. That's the thing too. There's nothing to fear about what you are so-called labeled with right now. Look at it as a gift to your awakening. Because anything can heal, and it's there for you to transform.
Right. I mean, I broke this bone in this right here, elongated break in my bone in my hand. First bone break I ever had in my life. Wasn't happy. And what did I do? I'm like, okay, well, I think I just pulled a tendon. That's how I decided. And I kept working because, what do I know, right? So I kept working. I'm driving home from Wyoming going, God, this hand still really freaking hurts. I'm like, go home, have a couple of Advil, have a glass of wine, put some ice on it. You'll be fine in the morning. That was the doctor's recommendation. And that's exactly what I did. And the hand stopped hurting. I woke up the next morning and it was so puffed out. I was like, well, I think I did something to my hand. So you're trying not to let fear or anything take over because you're trying to keep light of it because it's like, I don't know what I did. I must have broke a bone somewhere. I mean, I know exactly when it happened, but so I almost completely lost it when I saw the break from the x-ray. It was like, wow. They're like, you do good. And I said, well, I never do anything half-assed, and I'm trying not to hold back because I was so terrified and freaked out about like, what did I do? And why did I do this? It wasn't that it was a stupid accident. It was like, no, there's a reason. Spirit's stopping me for something. Okay, God, it's like, I'm already going so slow I could be dead. Now you want me to really be dead? Really? Why don't you just let me die then? I mean, it was like this drama came out over this but I literally had to stop. I mean, they literally wanted me to stop moving, period, end of story. That was it. And I did.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You can't do anything when you have a broken hand. I couldn't even wash my hair. I mean, I couldn't do anything. And so it was one of those things of, okay, I have to ask for help and support. I need to be gracious about this. I need to honor the pain because, whoa, there was panic that showed up in my body from a broken bone. I mean, things that I've never experienced. And I'm like, okay, where's this panic coming from? And that's all I ever did was just talk to my body. It's like, what's going on? How is this? And then when it was healed more or less, and I'm in physical therapy and the weakness in my hand and every time I would go in for my checkup and get an x-ray to see how the bone was healing, I had the best PA ever. I mean, she was so about, alternative healing, even though she's a PA. And she said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep it up. And I said, well, I'm doing a lot of energy work on my hand. I'm sending energy to heal it, all this stuff. I was just doing all this and fighting depression every step of the way. And she knew I was fighting depression because I didn't understand the full effect of what this was about. I do now. And I really did need to stop because things were coming towards me. And if I was not stopped to the degree that I was stopped, I would have missed it. Like this show. Because I would never have answered that email. Never in a million years would I have answered that email that I got. And then it just intrigued me. So I'm like, well, let's check it out. And so, I mean, talk about it was a gift. And there's always, if something's wrong with our body, it's usually a wake-up call for us. It's something that's going to shift us in our direction, shift our perception. It's a shift. It's nothing bad. Because I didn't intentionally break my hand, but somehow I think Spirit knew I was going to break my hand. And I kind of got a little inkling that something's coming up that's not what it should be, but I couldn't pinpoint it until I did it. And it was, I mean, it's perfect. It's the mindset. It all came down to still being in my mindset. And I wouldn't take drugs. That was the one thing is like, no, I will feel my pain before I ever take drugs. But what I needed was an anti-inflammatory. So that's the only thing I took, which was a little bit higher than Advil, but it was not a prescription drug. Well, it was a prescription, but it wasn't anything narcotic in it because I refused to take any kind of narcotics. And so that was the only thing I took because that pain, that cold bone pain, it was horrible. It was horrible. Anyways.
But what's beautiful about that story is that just how the process of what you went through to acknowledge your fear and talk yourself through it and just be present with it and work yourself through it. That's like the best thing you can do. That's such a perfect story.
It is. And I learned a lot because of it, because I had to be okay with what I had done. I had to be okay with it. So because I didn't want to be nasty or mean or grumpy. I just wanted to be okay. And I took care of myself during that process. So Dr. Lynn, tell us how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I have a website, creatingmydesiredlife.com, and you can find my book on there. You can email me a question, or you can get on my mailing list.
Well, great. Well, I'm so happy that you were here, and I love the fact that we just kind of tore apart the medical community just a little bit, but not in a negative way, but in a way of that we become more self-empowered, and to be in your profession and doing what you're doing and having the enlightenment that you've had. I mean, what a gift to bring this to the world for people to start helping to take care of their life and control themselves, because it really is about self-mastery, and we are the only ones that heal us. A doctor never heals us. It's always, always, always us.
Yeah. It's all about empowerment, self-empowerment.
Yeah, it totally is. Well, everyone, I want to thank you all for joining us today and joining with Dr. Carey. And if you'd like, I'd love for you to leave a comment below of what your thoughts are about the show, where we can address them or talk to you. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Kathleen M. Flanagan. And again, we have my books, Dancing Souls, The Call, and The Dark Night of the Soul, which you can get on Amazon and also on Kathleen M. Flanagan and Awakening Spirit. And grandmas, we do have the Bold Brave TV coupon codes for you. And next week, we're going to be talking to Kathleen Donnelly Ireland about her walking the Camino in her 70s. So it should be an interesting show. So from my heart to yours, I hope you all have a fabulous week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
This has been the journey of an awakening spirit with your host, Kathleen Flanagan. Join Kathleen each week as she will inspire and empower all those who are drawn to her to live their highest vision in the context of love and joy. Right here Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.